few more things to do. Okay. First, I just want to share Made with Love, our final sponsor of the evening. Really appreciate them sponsoring Laracon. As you can see there, they work with site audits. They can do architecture. They can refactor existing code, work with your dev team, and mentor them. So you need any of that kind of development work, obviously in the Laravel space, let them know. They also run a blog with a lot of great articles and things, and they've actually posted that in the swag area. So go to the swag page, and you can kind of sign up for that and check that out from there. So, and contact them for more information too from there as well. So thanks again to Made with Love. Appreciate the sponsorship. Okay, 2 more talks. Let's bring Kristin in. Okay. Here we go. Hello. Oh, I can't hear you. Unmute. Could be different.
Can you hear me now?
There you go.
It keeps switching my microphone.
Yeah.
Hi. Thanks
Hi. Okay, you are up.
All right, let's go ahead and share this screen, get started.
Okay, I see it. Looks good.
All righty. You'll have to bear with me while I move some of these Zoom controls around a little bit. They get in my way. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Kristin Collins, and I work at Titan. Today, I'm going to show you how to manage your SEO data using Laravel and Nova. This is the GitHub kind of thing where I'm hosting the code, and I'm going to post all of my links and the repo on the Laravel chat after the talk, if you guys want to check it out. Okay, so let's talk first about what SEO is. SEO stands for Search Engine Optimization, or a simpler way to put it, how to get your website at the top of the search engine results. Who cares, right? Well, according to Forbes, 75% of internet users never scroll past the first page of search results. And that's a huge number, so think about it. 3 out of every 4 people who search for your content are not going to find it if it's not on the first page. As a good example, a friend of mine started a boba tea business, and she named it Cassava. And when you searched on Google for that keyword, the first item was an article on how the cassava root causes cancer. Obviously, this was not ideal for her business, and her website didn't even appear on the first page at all. But after just 2 weeks of implementing the site optimizations that I'm going to show you today, she was able to get her site as the first search result for cassava with absolutely no paid ads from Google. Unfortunately, since then, she has renamed her business, so I was unable to include those results in my slide deck today. So unfortunately, you're just going to have to take my word for it. All right, but most of us, or some of us here, I guess, are developers. And some of you might be wondering, all right, that's great for someone who owns a business or is responsible for the product placement. But what about the developers? How exactly does this help you? Well, search engines use HTML tags to determine when and how to display your website to users. Google mentions that they prioritize sites that have distinct titles and descriptions. And they also mention that they prioritize sites that have been updated more recently. So let's think about that. If the information contained in code needs to be distinct and kept up to date, that means the job is going to fall on the developer to keep pushing out those updates. So as our code, frameworks, and CI/CD become more complicated, the less we really want to manage these updates on the code level. I mean, think about it. If someone wants you to upload a new image file, right? You're uploading that file, updating your code layout, pushing changes, requesting that PR to staging, reviewing it on staging, then requesting the PR to production, and reviewing it on production. That's an awful lot of work for a single image. All right, so some of us already have sites that include Meta, Open Graph, and Twitter tags on the base layout so that all of the pages have that information. And this is definitely a good place to start. It's going to be the place that we start with our demo today. But it still opens us up to the problem that we discussed in the last slide, where any changes to this base layout are going to have to go through a whole development pipeline. Also, some websites are going to launch SEO-specific campaigns for an event that they're holding or a subsection of their website, like an e-store. So we want to make this code adaptable. All right, slides over. Let's see some code. So first, I'm going to show you the demo site that I've set up for this demo. It's an example of a blog that likes to post articles about the best animals on Earth. This blog uses Nova on the back end to manage their posts. And right now, the site is generating all of its meta information for each and every page using the base layout. So let's go ahead and take a look at that base layout in our files. As you can see here, we have static values for our title, our meta descriptions, our keywords, and that's also extended in our Open Graph tags and our Twitter tags. Okay, so it looks like we have a very short list of things that we actually need to make dynamic, right? We just need to pull out those values. So let's go ahead and get started by creating a migration to hold these values in the database. We'll use the PHP artisan command to make the migration, and I'm going to call it a meta tags table. All right, so let's go ahead and open that one up. All right, and thanks to our artisan commands, we've already got our schema started. Let's go ahead and pop in those values that we already discussed. All right, so we're going to need to put in the title, the description, the keywords, and an image field for our previews. I'm also going to go ahead and throw in a column to hold the URL path. Now, there is conflicting information on the internet about how long your titles and your description should really be to optimize them for SEO. What I decided to do was I looked at when Twitter started truncating the title and description because Twitter has the shortest limits. So I'm making that as the basis for our migration. We're inserting the path here because this is the lookup value that we'll actually be using to know which entry in our database corresponds with which page we're loading. So that was actually pretty simple. We're going to go ahead and run the migrate command to update our database. And let's go ahead and use the artisan command to make our Laravel model. Luckily, we're not doing anything crazy with that, so we don't have to check that out right now. Okay, so that's how we've got started for the database. We're going to switch gears and start taking a look at Nova. Now, if some of you may know this, Laravel Nova is specifically a CMS for Laravel. So it makes it easy to use your Laravel modals already as an existing method, so you don't have to rewrite a lot of code. So we'll go through here and we'll see how all of our authors have posted their articles, right? They give it a title, a summary. They have some good content here from the Samuel L. Jackson Lipsum, because I don't like regular Lipsum text, and the author page. And those just pop up right here, right on the website. So we're good to go. Since they already use this CMS to post their blog posts, they would obviously like to use the same CMS to keep their SEO data. Luckily, this is very easy to do, and Nova will automatically match to our modal with a command. So let's skip back to our editor real quick. And we'll pass in this artisan command, Nova resource. And you see we'll match it to the same name as our modal. And we'll go ahead and click enter. So what this does is this creates that additional object here, this class in our project directory. And you'll see it automatically imports our modal class here. All we have to do is configure how this is going to display and what sort of fields we're using for the form that the CMS is going to manage for us. So right here, the title that we want for these is actually going to be the title that we enter in the database, right? We're also going to allow people to search not just the ID, but the title and the path. Oh, I see that my editor doesn't like my copied strings. And then last but not least, we'll fill in our fields. This should match your migration. And so I'm going to go ahead and copy this code and then walk through it a little bit. So Nova has these fields that are automatically imported, and this is going to tell our edit page what type of data to receive. So here we're making the title, the descriptions, and the keywords, all text elements, along with our path. But you'll notice that the image field here is actually going to save a file to whichever disk that we have configured in our storage config. So I've also included the disable download fields and hide from index because I don't want to render all these images on the index page. So let's see. Yeah, I gotta make sure these all imported correctly. All right. And then that's it. That's all we need to go ahead and get started. So let's go ahead and look at our Nova site and see what that looks like. You'll notice the resource meta tags pops up. We don't have one yet, so let's go to the create page. The image wasn't found. All right, let's go ahead and re-import that. Reload. There we go. So as you can see, those fields that we defined created the structure for this create form. Now, one thing we're going to need is a default or a fallback tag, because not all of the pages are going to come with their own custom metadata to start. So let's see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to this layout.blade file, and I'm going to copy these values that we have as our defaults, since we know that the site is using them already. So that's the title, description, the image file I'll upload here from my downloads folder. And the path we will set as default. And you'll see why we do that later, because we're going to check for that value. All right, let's go ahead and create that tag. Now, this is the existing information that we have, like I said, loaded in as a default. One other quick note that I wanted to reference is that if you are using the public storage path here, don't forget to run the artisan command to link your storage folder to a public folder. I've already done it, so it says my link already exists, but that's an important step if you want these images to display publicly. All right, so we already have our default tag implemented. I have a Cedar file here that's going to load some extra ones. So let's go ahead and see now what our list looks like. All right, looks like for our paths, we have that default meta information entered in for our post pages. Fantastic. Now we have to go back to Laravel and update the layout file. So at this point, we've updated our app with a migration to store the meta tag data, and we've set up Nova to manage that data. So now it's time to hook up this to the view layout so the information in Nova will display on the appropriate pages. What we're going to do is we're going to utilize Laravel's view composers. And if you haven't taken a second, you should definitely check out this documentation. It's really fun. View composers allow us to run snippets of code before displaying the view. So we won't run through all of the documentation with the talk, but we are going to follow the docs by first creating a file in our app providers, and we're going to call it the view service provider. All right, and I'll copy in this boilerplate code. So most of this is boilerplate. What we're doing here with the view composer is this asterisk is going to run on all the views that we have. If you only want this meta tag to update specific subdomain information or a specific portion of your site, you can definitely feel free to edit that here where you're just displaying the views. But for our purposes, we want it to run across the entire site. Another important thing to note is you're going to want to open up your app config file and add that view service provider in so that it will actually run on all of your pages. All right, so we're good to go. Okay, so the code that we run before the views is grabbing the meta tag information for the page that we're looking at. So we're going to go ahead and get started by parsing the current URL using the parse URL PHP function and the Laravel URL current helper to get the current URL that we're on. We're then going to grab the path that's returned from that parsed URL. I'm also defaulting this to the home page because otherwise the path will return an empty object. So now it's time to query our database. We're going to go ahead and grab that meta tag modal where the path matches our current path. We're going to get that first listing. Now, if a value is returned from the database, then we can just return this data directly to the view and everything should be fine. But if you remember, we defined that default tag also, because if we don't find a result, then we're going to want to have a fallback so that our page doesn't return an error. So this is similar code. We're checking that meta tag data where the path is default. You remember how I mentioned earlier that that was the field we were entering in Nova? So this is configurable as well for how you want your default to be defined. All right, and as you can see, we're passing this to all of our views with the object of meta tag. All right, so that means we can go back to our layout.blade file and we can update all of this meta tag information with that object. So let's go ahead and paste this in here. All right, so as you can see, we're pulling here the meta tag title, description, keywords, and the image all throughout this. Now, all this information is dynamic and managed in Nova, and it's time to test it out. Luckily, I use Laravel Valet locally, and so it's pretty easy to get a public link. You can just use Valet Share. What this is going to do is it's going to provide me with an in-grok link that I can use so that I can provide this to a meta tag previewer, metatags.io. So when we go ahead and preview just the home page on that home route, you will see our default tags that are being loaded, right? And this should look very similar to how the site rendered before. So if anyone was rendering the home page, there's no surprises there. The magic is when we pass in a post ID and you instantly see that it has a dynamic image, header, and description for each of these pages. That's my favorite. When pigs fly. So now all of this metadata can be managed directly in Nova without any more code updates. Now, really, this is just a jumping off point, and I hope that you can take some of these concepts and apply them to your specific situations. For example, I have, instead of using the path lookup here, I've also just returned the full URL. Sometimes you need to make sure if you're differentiating between URLs with query strings or URLs without query strings, and you want to make sure that you account for those accordingly. This would also be helpful to use the full URL if you had a subdomain that you were managing and you want to display different ones per subdomain. But like I mentioned before, you can also just set the views aspect to run different code for each subdomain. And then you could update your migration file with a subdomain in addition to the path to help you out. The goal was really just to hopefully introduce you to the Vue composers and to how easy it is to hook it up to Nova to show you how you can keep that up to date on your site. All right, so last but not least, I want to do a credits, kudos, and thanks to everyone who contributed to making my talk good, I hope. My company, Titan, they provided me with a Nova license so that I could do this talk and test everything. They also thoroughly walked me through the talk prep and helped me set up lots of things like my IDE and some of my test cases. I want to do a specific call out to Tammy Robinson and Matt Stauffer. They created an excellent document for us internally that really just breaks out all of the meta tags that you need in order to do social media previews well. Scott Cabot made a post on debugging meta tags on localhost. That's what helped me find that metatags.io site. And it will allow you to test these locally so that you're not running on production. And then last but not least, Hannah Force. She is a social media guru and really helped me come up with this idea from the start. So thanks for hanging in, everybody. I know my talk was a little bit shorter. Hopefully that saves us on the back end, but I hope it was still good and rewarding for everybody. And like I said, I will be posting the links to my information as well as my GitHub repo so that you guys can check out this code, and that'll be on the Laravel chat.
All right, thank you. Where am I? Come on, let's go. Zoom's getting tired. It's been a long day here. All right, thanks a lot.
Thanks, Ian.
All right, going in, last talk.